This is a podcast from the Samplecast, Volume 2, Episode 54.
The Samplecast.
Hello, I'm Ruben Cornell and you are very welcome to this week's Samplecast. Thank you so much for joining us. You might have noticed if you follow the Samplecast on YouTube, there's been a few changes recently. I've actually started uploading this podcast onto YouTube every week at the suggestion of quite a few people, as apparently YouTube is pretty good for podcasts. It's not personally where I listen to them. I prefer to go over to iTunes or Stitcher Radio, but I'm going where the audience is, so you will find the podcast there on YouTube every week, just with some static visuals, and you'll be able to find us there alongside all of the other places that you can check out the podcast, which are Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, iTunes, Google Play, Android, RSS feed, and all of those other destinations. Basically, if there's any way you want to listen to the podcast that you can't already, please do let me know and I will do my best to supply that to you. If you're picking up the Samplecast podcast on YouTube for the first time, do be aware that the podcast goes hand in hand with the proper YouTube show. And in the show that's presented by me, I get to show you all of those sample library interfaces in action. I get to demonstrate things. I get to show you the tips and tricks, all of the graphics that you need to know. So do subscribe to the YouTube show. I think you'll find that useful. It's much shorter than the Samplecast podcast, but there's still a lot of useful information in there. So this week at the end of the show, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for simple mapping solutions in the full version of Contact. There's also a hell of a lot of bargains in this week's show. There's a nice freebie, but we're going to kick off with the news.
Roundup.
So unusually, I'm going to kick off this week's news with a plugin. This is Nexcellence from PSP Audio. As a big fan of PSP, it's always great to see something new from them, as they don't often release plugins, and when they do, it's worth sitting up and taking some notice. So Nexcellence is a spring reverb emulation with saturation, decay time, colour controls, and a few more onboard dials as well. It runs in most formats for PC and Mac, and you can create everything from lush spaces to really old style kind of vintage effects by really pushing the settings. There's a brief overview for this plugin on the PSP website, but the best bet is for you to download it and try it for yourself. There's a 30-day demo available from there too. Do check it out.
Kiss is sweet as honey, and no money is ever gonna buy what I'm feeling for you. Tell me, will you be the one?
It's great to see another library from string maestro Pete Whitfield. I've got many of his previous string loop libraries, and they quite often make their way onto pop and disco tracks of mine. This time around, the feel is very different, with brooding and dark performances, recorded in 24-bit quality, and the library's just over 2 gigabytes in size with 480 different loops. The sound here is raw, it's close, and it's perfect for layering with multi-sampled string libraries to add realism. Do click the link in the show notes to check out the full package at the Loopmasters website. Cineharps from Cinesamples is out now, and it slots right into the rest of their Cine collection with ease. It's recorded once again at the MGM scoring stage in LA, and Cineharps features a familiar interface mixing the 3 microphone positions. In addition, Cinesamples have added a few new features to this harp library, such as the glissando mode and perspective mode, which allows you to automate the mic positions with the mod wheel. Now, Cineharps runs in Contact Player 5.6.8 and above, is 12GB in size, contains 26 different contact patches, and some of these are quite interesting effects patches too. It's not all just vanilla harp. I'm happy to say there's also a Cineharps demo from Will Bedford, who is fast becoming one of my favourite composers, so hooray for that. There's more details at the Cinesamples site. Distance Lights from Zero G is a 3.5GB library of WAV files, Apple loops, contact files, EXS24 and NNXT instruments. The focus here is on the sounds of sci-fi, and the library is divided into 3 parts. You've got ambiences, FX and layered sounds, and these have also been categorized into subgenres, which makes it quite useful to find your way around the loops. There's 240 samples here, and lots of them are over 40 seconds long, and there's more info at the Zero G website. And lastly, this was out last week, but I didn't quite have time to cover it. It's Symphony Series Percussion from Native Instruments. This is a pretty comprehensive collection of 55 orchestral percussion instruments in the full version of the library, because there's actually 2 versions. The full library has 29GB worth of content, and there's a much smaller 4GB version as well. The smaller version has 18 instruments, only the basic articulations and a single microphone mix, whereas the full version has 5 microphone mixers. The library has actually been developed by Sonoscore and recorded in Budapest. Now, that's different to the brass and woodwinds collections from Native Instruments, which were sound iron products, so do be aware that these have been recorded in different spaces. There are some interesting features here, such as the drumhead resonance simulation, which adjusts the sample's playback to take account of previous drum hits and also adjust the ringing and resonance of the playback accordingly. For more information and a full list of all of the sampled percussion on offer, do head to the Native Instruments website.
Bargain VST.
Summer must be here in full force as this week's show is overflowing with bargains. We're going to kick off with Scoring Mallets by Handheld Sound. This is available from VST Buzz. They've got a brand new limited time offer on this, and if you do a lot of orchestral writing, you should probably check it out. Scoring Mallets is a 20GB library of marimba, xylophone and vibraphone instruments. They run in the full version of Contact 5.5 and above. What I really love about the Handheld Sound libraries is the acoustic positioner function, which allows you to position the sound in a virtual space very easily from within the Contact instrument. You've got a 60% offer here, which brings the price down to just €69. I do think that's definitely worth it, and you should check out the deal at the link in the show notes. At the moment, you can save over £60 on a collection from Audio Verge. It's their cinematic bundle. These are sound design and pad libraries for Contact created by David J. St. Hill. I've checked out some of these libraries before and can thoroughly recommend them. It's now just under £50 for the bundle, and that's 65% off. Well worth a look. More goodies from Native Instruments, and they've slashed their prices on everything by Heavyocity for the next couple of weeks. I would say, to be honest, that some of Heavyocity's libraries are overpriced in my opinion, but some of the discounts here have really brought the prices in line with their competitors. However, there are also other libraries from Heavyocity which are pretty cheap to begin with, like Vocalize and Scoring Guitars, and they're also half off. Now, I do think they're pretty much no-brainers because you get 50% discount on those too. Do check out the Native Instruments website for full details. Contact Hub have sneaked in a cheeky discount for 50% off the Half-Life collection. There's 18 different sound design libraries here. They're about 13 gigabytes in size when you combine them all, and they run in the full version of Contact 5.6.8 and above. With the half off offer, it's just £25 for the full package. Head over to Contact Hub to take a look. And last up, some huge discounts over at Rigid Audio. They've got a rather ridiculous sale on their bundles over the summer period. Nothing is more than $10, and there's some real gems to be found here. Pad Station 1 and 2 have a lot of fans, and I can see people going for that bundle. It's just $6. Do have a look at the Rigid Audio website and see what you think of the other bundles too.
Free VST.
This week's freebie is Noise Invasion's Kitchen Drums Volume 1. Now, it's lovely to see this homespun library being offered for free, and it's less than 50 megabytes in size. There's no fancy contact instruments here, but it's definitely worth a look. It's just a lot of WAV files basically, and they've been categorized into different kitchen utensils. I'd definitely check out the download link in the show notes. It will take you to the Noise Invasion site where you can check that out.
Tips and tricks.
Following on from this week's freebie, the kitchen drums from Noise Invasion, I'm going to show you how to make some super simple contact instruments from basic WAV samples and easy ways to map the samples with just one click. So this tip is useful for anyone who's got the full version of Contact and they want to throw a whole bunch of samples in there really quickly, just map them to the keyboard and start to play them. So I'm going to show you this on Kitchen Drums Volume 1 from Noise Invasion, which was our freebie of the week in Samplecast 54. If you're listening to this on the podcast, it's probably best to go over to the YouTube show just so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So I've got a whole bunch of WAVs here, plastic utensils they're called. I'm going to order them from 1 to 21. And there's a really super simple way. The easiest way to get them into Contact is just to highlight them all and drag them in. And that will create an instrument and map those across the keyboard. If you want to see exactly where they've been mapped, just open the wrench icon there, click the mapping editor, and you'll see. Now what we've actually got here is a few different keys for each one of the samples. You can see how that works all the way up the keyboard. But there's a number of different ways to map, and you don't have to do it exactly like that. So let's just clear all of those and delete them. And if we were starting a new instrument from scratch, let's show you how to do that. So you can just go up to New Instrument, back into the mapping editor. And now I'll show you the different ways you can automatically assign these to different mapping configurations. Again, I've got them all highlighted, they're all selected, and I'm going to drag them in. Now depending on where you drag them into the mapping editor, there's a number of different things that will happen. If you drag them in onto a key, then it will map them by velocity on just one key. You can see that there. If you drag them into the mapping area itself, then you've got a number of different options depending on how high you place your cursor when you drag them in. Put it towards the bottom, you'll get one key per sample. Up a bit, you'll get 2. Up a bit more, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So if you want it just on one key, keep it to the bottom of the mapping window, and then just release, and all the samples will be assigned just to one key. And that's a really quick and easy way to drag samples in and map in the full version of Contact without fiddling about and dragging them all in individually. I hope that helps. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Samplecast. It's been a pleasure. If you're listening to us for the first time on YouTube, welcome. Don't forget that you can check out the full YouTube show and you can get in touch with the Samplecast in many, many ways. The best way is just to head over to the Samplecast website at thesamplecast.com. That's got all the information about how to get in touch with us. You can reach us via Twitter, via direct email. You can send us a message on Facebook. There's a number of ways to reach me. And I'd really like to thank everybody that gets in touch every week. The Samplecast podcast is on YouTube simply because people have suggested that it be there. So keep those suggestions coming. I'll take them all on board and I will try and help you out where I can. I'll be back again next week. For now, bye-bye.